Hello, everybody. I am very glad that today I have the opportunity to present our study in the Conference of Cities in Changing World, Question of Culture, Climate and Design. My name is Hafizi. Today I am presenting the research entitled of highlighting the necessity of study on post-occupancy evaluation for climate adaptive building shells and review of current development. This study has been done by myself and Professor Dr. Vural from Eastern Maritime University, Department of Architecture, Cyprus. Before starting the presentation, I would like to explain shortly the content of the presentation. Uh, Today's presentation is structured within six sections. Introduction, climate adaptive building shells, post-occupancy evaluation, which there are two main keywords and terminologies of this study. Later, I will continue with post-occupancy evaluation for climate adaptive building shells. Later, I will discuss the current developments and lastly, the further studies. If I start with the first section, introduction, in this section I will discuss the general issue of sustainability in recent years and the problem formulation of this study and how we support that with the PRISMA methodology. In today's world, sustainability and energy consumption is without a doubt one of the most critical issues in any field, and architecture is not exceptional. Exceptional buildings are one of the huge human footprints in the natural world. If we categorize the human activities within three main sectors of industrial activity, transportation, and buildings, buildings are consuming 48% of the energy, almost the half. So, uh, talking about sustainable solution in this sector has extra importance. So, in recent years, there has been different alternative and solutions, which one of them is adaptive shells. These shells can provide step change upgrade in energy efficiency and use of renewable energy while improving the comfort of building occupants. Basically, the adaptive shells they have the ability to adjust themselves to changing climate condition within different time span of hourly, daily, seasonally, or annual basis. In this component, adaptive means the capacity to react or profit from the outside climate condition in order to meet productivity and more essential to successfully meet the occupants' comfort and well-being. In general, assessing and studying this system can be done within seven project delivery phases, from design process to schematic and conceptual design to design development and construction, pre-construction testing, uh, commissioning, occupant operation, and lastly post-occupancy evaluation. I should mention that the study for all the phases is still lacking in this field, but currently, especially the study on post-occupancy evaluation is lacking. In order to support this claim, we have done a PRISMA study on this field. Basically, PRISMA methodology, or preferred reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis, is an evidence-based minimum set of items aimed to helping uh, authors to report a wide array of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Basically, this methodology aims to help authors improve the reporting of systematic reviews. In general, this methodology can be done within four phases of identification, screening, eligibility, and included. For our study, we went through the publication from online sources between 2010 and 2020. All publication had to be written and published in English language. In general, 112 publication been identified, which after the duplication, 10 of them has been removed, and also 102 went through screening. Out of that 102, 10 publication been eligible for having full text article assessment. And lastly, the conclusion of our systematic study showed us that there are only three studies including qualitative synthesis, and there is no studies including quantitative synthesis. In the following slide, I will show you parts of this study, although there are the huge tables. So if we go through them, in the first phase, in the identification, as I mentioned, 112 papers are identified. After duplication, 102 went through screening. Basically, in the screening phase, we classify them based on their main focus of study. Then, out of 102, 10 studies were eligible for the full text studies. In this case, we found that their problem formulation, their main outcome, and if they had any synthesis or they have suggestion for further studies. And lastly, the study shows us that there are only three qualitative synthesis and zero quantitative synthesis. To summarize this report, basically it shows us that there is lack of study on POE for climate adaptive building shells, since majority of the studies focus on energy efficiency assessment. There is no quantitative synthesis, very limited case study, and as our study shows, and as many scholars mention in their studies, there is a necessity for carrying the research on CAD based on occupant-centric focus. After identifying our problem, I want to talk about the aim of our study in general. So we have five aims or five phases for our study. First and second, we are reviewing the two main terminologies of climate adaptive building shells and post-occupancy evaluation. In the third aim is to understand the difficulties and barriers of carrying POE for climate adaptive building shells. In the fourth steps, actually, we try to highlight in which step we are now, what are the current development, and lastly, what should be the further studies, and what should be our following steps. So if we carry on with the presentation, in the second section, I would like to talk about climate adaptive building shells in general. As defined by Lonen in 2013, climate adaptive building shell has the ability to repeatedly and reversibly change their functions, features, or behavior over time in response to changing performance requirements and variable boundary conditions. The most one of the most important issues about climate adaptive building shells that we need to understand is the different characteristic of them. Basically, climate adaptive building shell can be characterized within six variables. First, physical domains, which include thermal, optical, airflow, and electrical. Of course, a system can target more than one, so they can merge, but in general, most of the development has been on thermal and optical. The second characteristic is a scale of adaptation, which can be macro scale or micro scale. Third is the control type, closed loop and open loop. Basically, the open loop control type is the control type which does not need an external support for controlling, and of course the closed loop is vice versa. If we talk about the response time, basically it's talking about the time span that the adaptation is applied. It can be based on seconds, minutes, hourly, daily, or seasonally. Then we should talk about the degree of adaptation, which it can be gradual in the time span or like on and off system. And lastly is the level of visibility, which we can have the variety of visibility here. It can be from the level that adaptation is not visible on the surface to the point that the changes of the size and shape, or in general the orientation, can be visible. So basically, these characteristic and variables show us that this system, in this system, there are multi-domains which they can affect the occupants. So there is a huge complexity here. And then in the third section, I will talk about the second keyword of the study, which is post-occupancy evaluation. POA is a way of providing feedback through a building life cycle from initial concept through to occupation. It can have benefits, short-term, medium, or longer-term benefits from identification and finding solution to problems in building, to finding new use for the buildings, or improving the building performance, or improving design quality in general. Same as climate adaptive building shows, now I'm going through POEM characteristic. When we want to carry on a POE analysis, these four characteristics needs to be defined. First is the stage of the review. Basically, it focuses on the time that the building has been occupied. So operational review will be carried out 3 to 6 months after occupation, project review 12 to 18 months after occupation, and a strategic review 3 to 5 years after occupation. Then we have element of review, which can be process, functional performance, and technical performance. Basically, the process is talking about the delivery process of the project. Functional performance is talking about the organizational goal, and of course, technical performance is about the measures and how the system is working. The methodology, basically, there has been already defined methodologies for WPO and how to gather the data. But in the other hand, based on the research, the methodology can be newly established. And lastly is the target of the review. As I mentioned, the POE study can be carried out within the long lifespan from the initial design phase to occupation. So in that case, we should know that our POE is targeting which phase and which standpoint and point of view. Um, so if we go to the main topic of the research, which is post-occupancy for climate adaptive building shares. What I explained so far shows us that climate adaptive building shares are complex. They have multi domains, and post-occupancy evaluation that we have so far does not have that dynamism. So what are the challenges and barriers for developing and carrying post-occupancy for climate adaptive building shares? CAPs, because of their adaptability and multi-ability, are complex components. So, in usage of this system, multi-domain can affect occupant satisfaction and productivity. In the other hand, because of the changes that we can see in the facade component, carrying a conventional and static POE cannot give us the accurate data. So here we have current problem. We have solid problems now, which the current POE methods do not allow real-time data gathering and transient assessment. The second, current methods focus on comfort in relation to the occupant's response and control, and they are unable to assess the interaction between users and climate adaptive building shots, which is one of the very important parts, and it is because of the multi domain and complexity of this system. And lastly, the current POE methods cannot identify the exact moment of dissatisfaction. So, in that case, we need to develop models for POE which can compete with the complexity and dynamism of climate adaptive building shows. Now, I would like to highlight the current developments in what steps we are now, what already have been done. In that manner, there are two alternative or two proposals right now in the literature, which they have different paths, and I will go through them. First alternative, which we can call it as a dashboard. It is coming from the study of Atia and other researchers with him in 2019, which they propose a framework which allow multiple users, which mainly we talk about occupants and operators, to share the management and control of the indoor environment and the adaptive facade technology. Basically, the framework that they develop focuses on energy saving, maintenance saving, control strategy, and user experience. The framework depends mainly on a central control point that connects users and operators through building management system. So, to sum up what has been proposed by them, they are basically talking about real time data gathering with some dashboard which that dashboard can connect users to the management system and also while they are monitoring the building facade. But in their study, still understanding the exact time of dissatisfaction is difficult, and also it is not considering the user facade interaction scenarios and types that we have in climate adaptive building share. So basically, this framework and proposal can work better for control strategies for building management system. But what in the end they are suggesting is that for from now on, POE should be based on a platform that receive direct and continuous feedback from the indoor environment and also facade system. In another study a year before it, again with the same scholars, uh, they uh, they said that we can have a conventional method with a repetition. So what they are talking is using the new methods such as dashboard. It one of the disadvantage is it can be expensive or it cannot be accessible for everyone. So still, we can use the conventional method, but by adding the repetition to it, we can still get a more accurate data. In this study, they proposed occupant center adaptive facade assessment survey, which throughout this study they identified the domains, they developed the survey, they put the survey into examination in order to be sure that it is working, and they are defining the repetition, which 2 to 3 times the survey needs to be repeated. Of course, still, okay, we can get a more accurate data with this method, but still is not the real-time data gathering, and we cannot understand the real-time discomfort, the exact moment of discomfort of the users. Although both studies give us a new point of view towards the topic, but still we need more studies in this field. Occupant-centric studies is one of the topics which recently are getting extra attention, but still there is a big lack of focus on this matter. So first of all, for the further studies, a more comprehensive POE method needs to be developed, which not only gather the real-time data but consider more variables, such as user facade interaction type, occupant feelings at the real time, and also the model needs to gather all the data. We need to talk how the data should be gathered, where they need to be stored, and how and with which method they should be analyzed in order to give us the opportunity to have proper decision making based on user satisfaction. As I mentioned, this study that I present today, the review, is a small part of an ongoing PhD study, which in the end we are working on proposing a comprehensive post-occupancy evaluation for climate adaptive buildings by considering more variables and with having wider perspective for the whole phases from data gathering, storage of data, and analysis of data. And lastly, I would like to mention that whatever model which will be proposed, it needs to be examined. So far, we have very lack of case study documented in this field, and it is one of the major issues in study of climate adaptive building which needs to be addressed. Thank you so much for your attention. Again, I'm very happy that I could be part of this conference. You can find the email address of myself and Professor Vural. Of course, we will be very happy to have further discussion for whoever is interested in this topic. Thank you so much again.